A fabulous free kick from Leighton Baines. It's scored by Ted Cahill in injury time for Everton. Stunning from Luis Rodriguez.
I'm Paul Hessian, co-founder of the Rainbow Toffees. Goodison Park has always been more than just a football ground to me. It's been a place where I felt part of something bigger. As an LGBTQ plus Evertonian, it's not always been easy to feel like football was a space for people like me. But walking into Goodison, hearing Z cars, seeing the Gladys Street rise, that's always felt like home. Over the years, I've seen our fan base grow more inclusive, more welcoming, and I'm proud that the Rainbow Toffees are part of that. Whether it's waving our flags pitch side on Rainbow Laces Day or just meeting mates at the match, Goodison gave us those moments. It's the end of an era, but the spirit of Goodison, that sense of belonging, is something we'll carry on with us to Bramley Moor. Nil Satis, Nizzy Optimum. Thanks for the memories, Goodison.
Hello, it's Only a Game podcast. Really glad to see you lads are still going strong as a podcast and doing really well. I know you put a lot of time and effort into the podcast, and it's really good to see you've done a special Goodison episode. So I'm Glynn, I'm an Everton season ticket holder in the lower Gladys Street. I've been going to Goodison for 28 years. My first fixture was in 1997 against Barnsley, and my final fixture will be Southampton on Sunday at Goodison Park. I'm really honoured and just feel really sort of honoured and pleased that I'll be there on Sunday to take it all in, both inside and outside the stadium, and I really understand it's a privilege to be there on Sunday, and I don't take that lightly at all. I really hope the club and the team can do Goodison Park justice on Sunday. Hopefully Everton can get the result, make sure we score the final goal in the ground. We give Seamus Coleman a big send-off. Moisey gets to have his minutes on the pitch and a clap for everything he's done this season. All the old managers, players, legends that can come out on the pitch and have a good clap and just really appreciate and enjoy Goodison Park for what it's been and what it's meant to Evertonians for this 130 odd year history at the stadium. It's meant a lot to me, players like Duncan Ferguson, Seamus Coleman, Leighton Baines recently, Mikel Arteta, Super Kev Campbell, Danny Cadamartri, Gary Speed in the 90s, Big Nev Southall. It just means so much to everyone that's been going there for a long period of their lives, and so many people have completely different memories. My dad's memories are more 1950s, 1960s, boys pen, right through to Howard Kendall playing football, then coming through as a manager and winning league titles with Everton and such like. So everyone will have real different memories, and I really hope that Everton can take some of what we've had at Goodison down to the new stadium. I honestly believe Everton is a unique football club. I think we've got two strengths as a football club. Mainly the fan base, us Evertonians, and number two is at Goodison Park. Unfortunately, we have to lose Goodison Park to move forward, but I do believe that loyal fan base can take a piece of Goodison, or maybe more than a piece of Goodison, a huge chunk of Goodison down to the new stadium. And if we can replicate some of that down there, then we can become a real force in the Premier League. And I really do think the future's bright for Everton. We don't need to have the biggest stadium in English football to make the loudest noise. And I really do believe that's what we'll be doing down at the new stadium. So all I want to say is thank you, Goodison Park. I hope everybody that either watches on TV, gets down there, goes to the game, whether you're just there having a few beers or you're in the city itself, I hope you have a great day on Sunday. I hope everybody listening, everybody involved really appreciates what Goodison Park has meant for A, football, B, Everton, and just what we actually are losing on Sunday is a massive piece of football in history. And I just want to say thank you, Goodison Park, for everything and how big a part of my life you've been. I'll never be able to describe in words, really. So yeah, really sad to see Goodison go, and I can't describe right now how I'll feel on Sunday, and a little bit fearful on that point, but also I think it is time to move forward. Up the Toffees, thank you very much.
Goodison Park, it's been a part of my life for as long as I can remember, and retracing my steps from Whalley Village, where my dad was born, my grandma and granddad's place on Pendleton Road. The grand old lady, well, she loomed over my childhood and still feels just as big, just as beautiful as she did when I was 6 or 7. And that was my first game. That was Peter Reid's return as Sunderland manager in the November of 1996. We were supposed to go to a previous home game where we demolished Southampton by 7-1. And in the first of many Everton that moments, Sunderland instead. That was my first game, with my dad all excited about seeing Paul Bracewell, me for seeing the likes of Kanchelskis and Duncan Ferguson, already mentally practicing for how I'd throw an elbow out on the playground on Monday. And we were humbled, 3-1. But for every result like that beggared belief, every time I've drowned my sorrows and cursed the footballing gods, no one place has seen me happier than Goodison Park. And until very recently, I've never imagined the world without it. And that comes, in this current iteration at least, I guess, on Sunday. My dad has said I'm there to represent the family, like I'm the only one who could get time off work to attend a wake. But what a privilege to have been part of this club, to still be part of this club, to have my own memories of decades of goals, of moments that you forget everything, of raw, guttural noises, all stacked on top of everything that came before. I'm yet to have kids of my own, but this Goodison will be a story to be passed down. And I'm excited for what's to come, both for the women's team and, of course, our new home. But we are the lucky generation who gets a foot in both camps. The Goodison injected into our brains and veins from those that came first to what comes after. It's a beautiful, bittersweet burden. Carry that weight, and one last time for now, let's get down to Goodison Park. Woo!
So, Goodison Park. As a 32-year-old man, I've had a slightly strange relationship with it. I'm part of the generation of Goodison goers that hasn't seen a lot of success. The 95 FA Cup final, it's the last thing, obviously, that is quite commonly known as the last thing that we won. I would have been 2, not even reached 3 at that point. So the ground has been filled with a sense of strangeness, because it's been that thing of, relegation battles under Howard Kendall, etc. And then sort of a resurgence under Moyes for that 11-year period. And then onwards from that, we've had that sort of Martinez season 2013-14, and then 10 years of a bit of chaos since Mashiri came in. Now it's kind of strange to be leaving. Just for a bit of clarity, I'm recording this on Wednesday the 14th of May. So it has been announced yesterday that the Everton women's team are going to be taking over Goodison, which personally I think is an excellent thing. When I first heard it, I was a little bit sort of taken aback by it, thinking, it makes the game this Sunday a little bit strange, because it means that it's not the last game at Goodison Park. But then I saw, strangely enough, a Twitter post. I can't remember who it was from, but essentially it had the video from Toy Story 3 where Andy hands the toys over to Bonnie in sort of a, here you go, you can now enjoy it for the next generation. And that's kind of how I feel about Goodison Park. It's a very, very good way of putting it, in that it's had its time for the men's team, and there's no doubt that they need to move. Bramley Moore needs to happen. But I love the fact that I can still go back to it, and I hope that it helps that women's team grow and kind of get back to where they should be, competing for league titles. And I'm hoping it doesn't stay the same. I'm hoping they do put work into it, and there are certain stands that go, and the experience becomes better for those fans that are going, because as unique as Goodison is, it's obviously, it shows its time. It shows it's when it was first designed and the changes that have been made to it going forward. I'd put a post up. The last time I actually went to a game was the Bournemouth FA Cup game back in, I think it was early February. I've been to the stadium tour recently, which was great, but nothing like going to an actual game. I put a post on my actual, I think it was on Instagram about it. I had a few photographs, and I thought it's got distinctness that I will miss. It's got a smell. It's got a smell of ale and a smell of things that I can only describe at that football ground. It's got a feeling around it. It's got, it has got a uniqueness. The wooden seats, even things like the stanchions, kind of blocking half the goal. If you get the wrong seat, are all things that you laugh at, but I will miss. It's going to be very strange when I can get to a game at Bramley Moor, and it doesn't matter where I book a ticket, I will get a good view. And that's very strange, because at Goodison, for people that have done this, when you don't go to a game maybe as much as other people, when you're booking your ticket, you have to kind of look at the whole situation and go, where to avoid here? I don't want to be in the main stand too far back, because I can't see half the goals. The back of the Gladys, if the ball goes 20 feet in the air, you completely lose all sense of where it's gone. But I love that. I've been very lucky to sit in all four stands, experience some amazing games over the years that have gone. A standout for me is always going to be the Man United game back in 2005, where Ferguson bagged the winner. One of the few nights I've been to a game where on the walk up to the ground you could sense that something was going to happen. And it's a very strange feeling when you go to that. It's a very cool feeling when you go to a game and you just think something's going to happen here. Something is just going to happen. And it was. I still remember it was bedlam when that goal went in. We were sat at the other end in the family enclosure towards the park end, and I still remember the ball coming in and just sheer chaos around us. And it was at that point where obviously Rudy had gone to United the season previous. The summer previous. And it all kind of came together in what was just a classic Everton evening. I would have loved to have gone to more. For me, work was always an issue, and I can't say I can dedicate my time as much as some people do, and I admire anyone that goes home and away. But yeah, I like the fact that it means something different to everyone. Everyone's got their own unique memories. For me, it's always, a match day would involve going to the Blue Dragon on Goodison Road, pie and chips before the game, and yeah, I will miss that. I love the walk to Bramley Moor. I've done it. I've been down to see the ground, and I've been to have a look at the area, and that walk from the centre of town is going to be pretty cool when the whole area is starting to get built up and properly put together. But yeah, it's going to be tinged with a sense of weirdness when I'm not going, on the train to Kirkdale and walking up, and odd enough seeing Anfield in the distance and seeing the paperclip stand. It's I kind of part of me is still sort of in denial that we're not going to be there full time next season, but I do love the fact that it's sticking around for the women's team. I think it gives a lot of people who maybe don't get a chance to go or aren't quite happy with going a chance to still go to if they want to, and also it gives you the chance if you don't want to go again, you don't have to go. I'm hoping the women's game does grow naturally with it. It's a real sign of intent actually from the Freaking Group that I really quite like, that they're backing the women's team to have a ground of that, because a lot of the teams in the WSL are ground sharing with the men, and to have a permanent home for that side is a real statement of we're backing this and we believe in it. And it opens up opportunities for other things as well. You could have youth games there, you could have competitions there, you could hold other events there, whilst having this state of the art 50,000 seat stadium on the docks. It's a real interesting way of doing things that, as nice as the community project would have been, it would have been great to have that kind of thing knocking around. You could have had Everton community areas and all these different things going around. That would have been excellent. I still think having football at the heart of it is excellent, and I really like that. And it would be nice to go back to that ground and take it in, and it not being a farewell. I mean, Everton are advertising this whole thing on Sunday as end of an era, which now kind of makes sense, because it is an end of an era, and a new era now starts with someone else taking it. A new team comes into it, and then they get to create their own memories in it. They get to create their own uniqueness around it, which I think is excellent. So yeah, I can't say I'll miss it because it's not going anywhere. But for what it means to me going as a supporter, it's an amazing place. And yeah, it's just been a very, very strange week. It's not hit me until sort of this week that the last men's game, Premier League game, etc., is going to be there this week, and it'll be an emotional day on Sunday. I'm hoping to get around the ground. I haven't got a ticket, unfortunately, but not many people do in the grand scheme of things. And yeah, it's a really interesting week. But I love the fact that we're taking it forward, and I love the fact that it's not just that's it and the ground goes demolished. It sticks around, and like I said, the next generation comes to take it over and hopefully make their own memories with it, and it sees some success with the women's team because they deserve it. They're an excellent put together unit. So yeah, that's everything for me on Goodison. Thanks.
So my number one Goodison memory is the 2010 derby against Liverpool, and we beat them 2-0 at home. It was a weekend of my 21st birthday. Me and my mate from uni got tickets in the back of the lower Gladys. The atmosphere was absolutely amazing. Beating them, obviously, always going to be amazing. And yeah, a nice early birthday present from Tim Cahill and Mikel Arteta. Second favourite memory was same year, but earlier in the year, season before. In February 2010, we played Man United at home. Lunchtime kick-off, sort of a unseasonably sunny day, and we went down a goal really early, and then out of nowhere, really, Billy Lessinov equalised, and then we played him off the park, really, and we won 3-1. My abiding sort of memory was late on Jack Rodwell. I think he came on as a sub, and he scored a breakaway goal in front of Gladys and took his top off and celebrated in the corner. He was very young and very promising, and he just sort of felt like we were on the verge of something special with that squad that never quite materialised. It was a great game, great memory. It's took on a bit of extra poignancy in recent years because I went to that game with a mate of mine who we used to go to the rugby together with, and we were good mates, good Evertonian, Warrington fan as well, and we went to the game together, and a great laugh. We always spoke about it and fondly remembered it, and he passed away a couple of years ago. And it's just a good memory to have with a good mate who's no longer here. And my third memory, I'm going to pick three because I'm greedy. My third best memory, I think it's 2014, at home to Wolfsburg in the Europa League, 4-1. Play them off the park. Baines and Coleman both scored. I think Baines assisted Coleman for his goal. It was an absolute dominant performance. One of the best European nights probably in my generation of supporters. And again, quite extra special that night. I took my sister. She was 10 years old at the time, kid sister. She was getting into footy, and yeah, she's always remembered that night as well. Probably one of her few trips she's been to Goodison. I don't think she's been to many at all, but yeah, that was a special one as well.
Hello there, it's Jimmy from It's Only a Game here, and as part of our Farewell to Goodison sort of podcast, I'm sending over my favourite Goodison Park memories. So this should only be a short voice note. No, but seriously, Lampardian transition. It's a mixture of emotions for me. Obviously, it's been at Everton's home since 1892. We were at Anfield prior to that. If you want to know the story of that, look it up. Haven't got the time to go into that, but for over 130 odd years now, Evertonians going back many generations, including, Matt and I's great grandfather, I believe, went to Goodison Park to watch Everton, and it's weird to think that in terms of games now, Matt and I, and obviously our father, won't be going to any more. There's one game left at Southampton. We haven't got tickets, unfortunately. It's strange to think that, because it's just, it's part of what we have done for how many times a season. We were never full-on season ticket holders. Those that are season ticket holders, wow, it's going to be a hell of a difference to not make the journey, the pilgrimage, if you will, to Goodison anymore. But of course, there is a fantastic looking new stadium on the docks, on the waterfront of the Mersey to look forward to. But it's a strange one, because I think for me, and this is something I observe about Everton, and I don't know if other fans think this about their club. I think that everyone naturally, obviously, is proud of their history as a club, no matter who you are, no matter what you've won. You're always going to reflect on your achievements, but I feel like, and this is something I think is reflected in a lot of Evertonians, even down to transfer targets, looking at getting Richarlison back and looking at getting John Stones back, is we're a very sentimental club, a very sentimental fan base, and certainly over the last 30 odd years, I mean, if it's 40 years since our greatest ever season. I wasn't around for it, but Bayern Munich 85, I'm sure will come up in somebody's favourite Goodison nights, because literally everyone's dar was there from anything I've heard. It's headed to that now, it's about 50 odd thousand. I swear at least 120,000 people have claimed to be there if they were alive at the time. Even people who weren't even born in 85 have claimed to be there, I think. But that is undoubtedly the greatest night at Goodison Park in its history. I couldn't do a famous Goodison Games type recording without alluding to that. But in the 40 years since that double, if you will, of League and Cup Winners' Cup, we've had the league title and a cup win and nothing for 30 years. And I think leaving Goodison Park, as much as it's going to be a wrench on Sunday, I'm recording this on the Monday before, on the afternoon of the 12th as things stand, it's going to be a wrench. It's going to be a weird atmosphere at Southampton, the Southampton game. It's going to be a strange thing when the final whistle goes, and it's going to feel very unusual. But I think we also can't afford to be too sentimental. I mean, this is the one time I feel like Everton Football Club and its fans and everyone involved can be sentimental and can do things like this, reflecting on memories and I hate to quote a former chairman who's obviously since passed, but good times. Had some good times. And I think that sums up sort of and I don't know if Matt's going to send a recording for this, but my memories of Goodison Park is had some good times. Like, my first game was in 1996, so it was after we'd last won the FA Cup, last won anything. So I can't say I've seen anything particularly life-changingly incredible, but there are games that will stick with me, good games and good times that will stick with me. Our first game was Middlesbrough at home in September 1996. We lost, standard, but it takes me on to my real first Goodison memory that was a positive one anyway, was Southampton at home, I think in the September of 96, or maybe in October 96. I was only 6, I don't remember. But we won 7-1. The late Gary Speed scored a hat-trick. I feel like Kanchelskis got involved that day. He was some player, Andrei Kanchelskis. And I feel like Egil Otstenstad scored just before half-time for Southampton. We were 5-0 up, and then they got one at the break. And I'm apparently quoted in the lose at half-time, according to my dad anyway, saying, "Oh, Dad, you know how it's 5-1 at half-time? Yeah. That means it's going to be 10-2. Like, because it works that way, doesn't it? But the innocence of the 6-year-old me, who could double numbers, apparently, at the time, good to know I could do some maths, thought it was going to end 10-2. It didn't. It ended 7-1, which was just fine anyway. And I remember, just the euphoria, thinking, this is brilliant. There's goals flying everywhere. This is fantastic. Little did I know that it wasn't always like that. I mean, I kind of knew, but it wasn't always going to be that way every time I turned up again. The Southampton fans, in light of Southampton tweeting Derby County about, what was it? We had you worried there, and that banter. I must say, 30 odd years ago, they were singing "We Want To" and "Always Look on the Bright Side of Life" in the away end at in the Bullens. So that was just fun memory of, obviously, the first time I'd seen us win was 7-1. The Southampton fans were hilarious, and credit to them. And what a game! So that's a real stand-up memory of while going to Goodison. Obviously, as a 6-year-old, it was, I've been to some other games. There was a game we beat Watford 4-2. I think Mark Hughes maybe even scored. And any time when you win a game is always fun. But I seem to remember facing Watford and being quite excited because Watford didn't know much about them. They'd just come up from the second division, and it was in a time when, the second division wasn't as well followed, nationally in terms of the media and whatnot as it is now. But really, it was a bit grim in the 90s. I saw some rubbish games as well. I remember sneaking past Ipswich in 1999 in the FA Cup. I think they had a late goal disallowed. They were in the second division at the time, of course. There was some dark times. I'm glad I didn't go to the Coventry game in 98 when we stayed up on the final day. I don't think I could have coped. I remember following it from home. But I just remember, scoring 2 goals in quick succession against Fulham in about 2002-03. Gravison did this mad eyeball celebration, which I think ended up on the opening credits of the Premiership ITV programme the following season because he was mad. But then it brings me on to 2004-05 season, which I think any Evertonian would say that was by far our best season in the Premier League era. It wasn't our highest points total, but it was our best season in terms of league position and probably in terms of memories in the Premier League era. We actually got half-season tickets for that Christmas, because it was like we were doing that well in third place at Christmas. It was like, right, it was at a time when you could get half-season tickets, and it wasn't like a waiting list. We'd been the Bolton game actually that year. We won 3-2, 2-1 down, 1-0 down, and Ferguson scored again to win 3-2. That was a good game. Bolton were a good side back then. Fair play to them. But games like, the one that obviously stands out was Man United in the April of 2005. Ferguson scoring. Big dunk, of course. He's got his book out. Scored a header in about the 50-something or 60th odd minute. A header from an Arteta deep free kick from wide left. They had Ronaldo, Cristiano Ronaldo, of course, Wayne Rooney playing for them, of course. We'd been the cup game where Rooney had come back for his first game. That was a nasty atmosphere. Not a great memory, not only because we lost, but it was a riot police down Goodison Road. Got out of there as soon as we could. But the league game, beating them 1-0, the first time we've beaten United since we beat them in the cup final in 95 and in the league that season as well in 94-95, which I don't remember. It was phenomenal, and it was like the belief that we could end up getting into the Champions League, and obviously we know what happened with Villarreal. But that was just the atmosphere of the night was incredible. I think a lot of commentators and a lot of players on both sides that night have referred back to the atmosphere. I know Gary Neville, who got sent off that night for kicking a ball into the crowd and hitting a kid in the face, which was kind of in our side of the family enclosure at the time, so it was a bit like, what's going on? We couldn't quite see it. It was down the Gladys Street side of it, but where we were near the park end of the family enclosure. But it was it was weird. And Scholes getting sent off for lunging in on, I think, Kilban. I could have got that wrong. So United went down to 9 men. Ferguson had a bit of a head loss. We beat them 1-0. It was the best night I've had at Goodison, the best game I've had at Goodison by far. I know we beat Southampton 7-1. I remember us beating Palace 4-0 that year, which was a great result, not least because James Vaughan broke the youngest Premier League goal scorer record with the 4th goal. The young 16-year-old James Vaughan, who looked such a prestigious talent at the time, and unfortunately his career didn't quite go the way we all would have hoped on that day. But it was, that season brought me a lot of great memories. I think Osman scored last minute, a cold January game at home to Portsmouth, and the fella behind me just gave us a kiss, and I was like 14. It was so strange. There was, I'm beating Newcastle to qualify essentially. Okay, I think we secured it midweek when Liverpool went to Arsenal, lost. But going on the Sunday even, but on the Saturday, that was Sunday, Liverpool lost to Arsenal, but we beat Newcastle at home in the final home game of the season. David Weir scored, which was a rarity. Tim Cahill. They had Souness in charge, and they had the likes of Shearer. I think Bellamy was there at that time. I could be wrong. It was Newcastle coming off the back of Bobby Robson going into the Souness team just before they signed Michael Owen. So it was a good Newcastle side that had a poor year, and we absolutely battered them. And never in doubt won the game. And it was just, again, it was a massive celebration. We were going to Europe regardless whether it was Champions League or UEFA Cup at that time. As it was, we ended up in the preliminary stages of both, getting knocked out in both. But, less said about that the better. But speaking of Europe, I think brings me on to probably the best away fans I've seen at Goodison. And there's been a few, but the best away fans have to be AK Athens. Bit of a rogue shout, but I think anyone who was there that night in, I think it was 2009, we played him in the group stage of the now Europa League, UEFA Cup and old money. Beat them 4-0. I think they had a player sent off. Remember Louis Saha was unbelievable that night. I think I may have got that one wrong. But their fans never shut up. And they lost. They were losing 4-0 and they were still setting off flares, smoke bombs. Greek fans are phenomenal as it is. And I have to say, they were by far the best away fans I've seen at Goodison. Mirrored by the fact, of course, that when they came back to Goodison for Tony Hibbert's testimonial, we were there in a pre-season game where the only time I think I'll ever see a pre-season game where there's an actual riot on the pitch. Not in a bad way, but obviously Tony Hibbert, who never scored a competitive goal in his, nearly 20 years at Everton. Obviously, not all of that professional, but never scored a competitive goal, scores a free kick. And I have to say, that free kick had no right to go in under the keeper. But it did. And then the Lower Gladys, and just we were a bit higher up in the main stand, but like the family enclosure where Lower Gladys just spilled out onto the pitch. And the Greek players, AK Athens, I think, brought some of their younger players as well. They were going through some problems at the time. were just like, what is going on? This fella's just scored a free kick from about 20 odd yards out, and all the fans are piled on pitch, and literally it was unbelievably it was stupid. It was unbelievably stupid, but it was so funny because the joke was for about 10 years, probably longer, if Tony Hibbert scores, we riot, and he never scored a competitive goal. I think that was his only goal in an Everton shirt, and it came in essentially a meaningless friendly, but it wasn't, because it was his testimonial. So that was a fun memory and all, but yeah, like, it's difficult when you know, with the cost of getting over to games and going over a couple of times a season, you've got to pick your games sometimes to get those great memories. And don't get me wrong, there's been some dark ones. The Tranmere Cup defeat, I think, you know, I'm sure Dak will love the fact that I've referenced that, was one of the darker games. The Watford game where we lost 5-2, we walked out before the fifth goal went in. We conceded 3 goals in the last 10 minutes, and I vowed then to not go back until Rafa was gone, and I didn't. It showed me that Rafa was just not the man. You know, the fact that, you know, our last couple of games, you know, been the Bournemouth Cup defeat, the Luton Cup defeat. The last 2 years I've seen Everton go out the FA Cup. Well, we have, I should say. So it's shown the last few years, unless you've been going regularly and you can point to, like, final day Bournemouth success, or, you know, the staying up, or the Palace comeback, you know, or the Derby last season, you can point towards those kind of games. But for me, I don't look at them. I know I wasn't there, but I don't look at, for example, staying up against Bournemouth on the final day, or coming from 2 down to beat Palace to secure survival on the penultimate game, or, you know, even necessarily a Derby win. Okay, it dented their whatever title hopes, and it kept us basically in the Premier League. But I don't see winning games to keep us up as a great memory. I see it as a necessity. I see it as actually part of the problem that I've kind of linked with Goodison Park and with Everton Football Club in the last 30 years, is dwindling of standards and going back to sentimentality of, we look so far back to, we love our history and what we've won, and that's fine and that's great. And Goodison Park is a massive shrine to the league titles, the FA Cups, the Cup Winners' Cups that have been, the Cup Winners' Cup I should say, only one of them that's been, and the legends. And, you know, you got the wraparound of all the legends at the ground, and you know, you start, I don't know if you still have the flags of like Dave Hickson, Alan Ball and Dixie Dean, Ted Sagar, Joe Royal guys. You know, absolutely we should keep that. Bramley Moore, you know, keep that those little homely touches of legends of the past that have won great trophies with this fantastic football club. But I feel like as well now, we do need to nip the sentimentality in the bud. I know very much it was a case of it very much trickled down from a former chairman, I would say, in Bill Camwright, who, you know, God rest his soul, of course, but very much you know, massive Evertonian, but obviously wanted Everton to be what it was in the 60s and 80s when he was a match-going fan in the boys' pen and all that, or wherever, probably a bit older than that, wasn't he? But, you know, he was, you know, a fan of the club when they were doing really well. And when you've got nothing current to hold on to, what you do, you look back to the glory days, don't you? And the good times. So I look, it's going to be a wrench on my day leaving Goodison, don't get me wrong, but I do also feel I think it's been established, it's a necessity. I know, like Duncan Ferguson said, he's gutted to be leaving, but I think for the fans and for the football club, if you want to go into the modern era, I don't want to go all corporate Everton. I remember Arsenal fans saying when they left Highbury, we don't want to go all corporate Arsenal, and that's literally what they've been the last 20 years. But I think that's not just Arsenal, that is Premier League football in general. Certainly the quote-unquote big 6 clubs, but I would argue other clubs as well with new modern stadia or upgraded stadia have gone that way, because that's where you have to kind of go in order to really succeed at the very, very highest level. I'm not saying Everton will necessarily go full corporate. I'm not saying Everton will, you know, look nothing like the Everton Football Club that we've known and loved for, in my case, the last, you know, 30 years. But in a way, you kind of want it to not look like it has been for the last 30 years, because we haven't won anything. We haven't done anything of any great note. We've had a 4th place finish, a cup final in 2009. You know, and I think back and I go, how many great games at Goodison would have been listed? You know, the Liverpool Cup replay, the Villa round 5 game, the Borough quarter final. We came back against Borough to win, I think 2 or 3-1 to get to the semi-final. If we'd have won that cup, those games would be remembered far, far better, and we'd have been able to look back at them as great Goodison games, you know, amongst many others. But because ultimately the club has done nothing for so long, I'm not saying that's Goodison Park's fault, far from it, but I think it's this kind of time warp for stadium, which we love and we'll miss, and we cherish it, and we love the fact that we've been able to hang on to this ground for as long as possible in the modern era. But it's well past its if you want to say use by date, it's well past its purpose now, and it's a difficult one because, like I say, on the day I will be devastated to be leaving, but it's a necessary thing to have to do for Everton. And there's been some great games I've been to. There's obviously been some other games that, you know, I can't get there all the time. I've watched on my TV, late winners and cracking European games. I mean, a little shout out to the SK Brand game we went to. We won 6-1 on the night. We missed the final goal, unfortunately, and Johnson scored an absolute screamer to secure his hat trick, because that's the last ever game we went to with my grandfather, who's since passed, my dad's dad. And to see us win 6-1 in the European game, okay, you can say it was against like the Norwegian Cup winners or something from the previous season, but it was a European game and we won 6-1, and that's special. You know, that is impressive. And his memories of Everton Football Club, my grandfather's and our grandfathers, I should say, using math, will always be at Goodison Park. And I think that's what I'll try and remember, is that it's not so much even about the games in my last 30 years. I know for many older Blues it'll be a case of, oh, went to Bayern Munich, or if you look at our dad, he went to a lot of games the 69-70 season when we won the league, or, you know, went to games in the Cup run in 84, we ended up winning the Cup, and so on, and other great stories. You know, Andy King in 78 and the derby where we'd won, you know, the first derby for 7 years with that screamer. You know, so many people for other generations have got great memories going way, way back. But I think that's part of it, is it's not necessarily even about these last 30 years. These last 30 years have made it, in a way, easier for me to be less sentimental about the ground, and easier for me to emotionally think, right, let's move on to this nice new stadium, where it's not about the stadium, it's about hopefully things will be better on the pitch, and that we can do that stadium justice and ultimately get back to winning something at some point and get back into Europe. Again, even just semi-regularly. We don't expect to be there all the time, of course. You know, we've got no right to be, but I think it's about those that have passed that will never see the new stadium, and it leaves a little bit of them behind, because people have got relatives whose ashes will be scattered at Goodison Park, and people will have got married at Goodison Park and had ceremonies. And I think it's like with any club when they leave a stadium, is that a little bit of your family history goes, because it's what introduced you to football, was going to that ground and seeing that team at that stadium. And that's the part I'll be sad about, is losing that little bit of our grandfather a little bit. And, you know, obviously not, but a little bit, because he won't know Bramley Moore in person, and obviously the times you had with him at Goodison Park, like, you know, it's that that's going to make me feel sad, rather than, oh, the great football games we've seen. Because I think in terms of football games, like, don't get me wrong, there's been some great games. There's also been some terrible games. There's which I won't dwell on. I've already referenced 2 or 3 of them. And there's been others as well, Jesus Christ, where you swear you're never going to go back again. But you do, because we all do, because we all love our football clubs at the end of the day. No matter what they throw at us, and believe me, this football club, despite not actually being relegated, it's thrown everything else at us but a relegation. Which I know for some people might say, that sounds alright, actually, you've not gone down. But within the context of Everton's 70-odd years consecutively in the top flight, I mean, they've done everything. They've done everything to try and ruin that. Let's be honest. And there's been some horror shows at Goodison, Jesus Christ. Oh God! But you know, there's also been some cracking games, and I hope we can give it the send off it deserves, because it has been the home to some fantastic sides down the years. You know, the sides that, you know, won the league in the 30s with Dixie Dean, in the 20s and 30s, I should say, with Dixie Dean, Ted Sagar in goal, and wow, Christ, I can't remember half the squad from that, but the sides of the 60s, got the Holy Trinity statue of Colin Harvey, Howard Kendall and Joe Royle. Of course, the great side, Alan Ball, also part of that team, the Golden Vision, Alex Young, Brian LeBone. Jesus, there's been legends of the 60s right through to the, you know, the 70s, when the likes of your Gordon West, your Billy Binghams were a bit, you know, not so great, but, you know, not horrendous. Bob Latchford was good. He was very good. Right through to the 80s, of course, where I think any Evertonian of a certain age could name that side from 84 to 87. An FA Cup, 2 league titles and a Cup Winners' Cup, and it should have been more. I mean, you can't take that away from the club, you can't take that away from Goodison Park. What an era that was. And look, right the way through, there's been some cracking players, even in the intervening years, where it's been utter dross. Your Lukaku's, your Arteta's, your Richarlison's. I mean, you know, Wayne Rooney, of course, came through and then essentially pretty much retired at Goodison. I know he had some time in America at Derby, but, you know, at the top level, he wasn't the same again. There's been some fantastic players who pulled on the blue shirt. Some wonderful players that pulled on the visiting shirt, of course, at Goodison Park. Many of the best players. And I shouldn't, you know, go without saying that Pele and Eusebio played at Goodison Park in the 1966 World Cup. And, of course, Eusebio was brought back to Goodison Park in around 2009-10 when Everton drew Benfica in the UEFA Cup Europa League group stages. Benfica won 2-0 that night, but Eusebio was paraded on the pitch and he got an incredibly warm reception because despite being at times moody, angry, some may even say bitter, Evertonians are actually a very knowledgeable fan base and they can appreciate great legends of other clubs. They can appreciate footballing greats, no matter who they are, no matter what shirt they put on. May not always like them in some cases, but they can always appreciate a footballing great, and Eusebio was certainly one of them, as of course, undeniably, was Pele, two of the greatest players to grace Goodison. Shame they never wore a blue shirt, but it was a different time. We'd have probably had a bid put in by now and they'd have gone to Chelsea, most likely, in the modern era. But, yeah, what more can I say? I feel very privileged to have been able to go to Goodison Park as many times as I have done. Not as many times as I'd liked, but then there's enough times I've watched on TV or on other dodgy means and gone, thank God I'm not there spending all that money. But no, I will miss the place. I'll miss the match day experience. I'll miss the Blue Dragon chippy, although I think that'll still be there. If the Hot Box your takeaway choice, then fair enough. Or wherever else you go. You know, I've been to Wilmslow a couple of times. It's always good in there. Rammed, but good. Always, you know, good atmosphere, pre-game and post-game. And yeah, look, I'll miss so much about Goodison Park. The just how old it is, really, and just how it hasn't changed much at all since I first went 30 years ago. And to be honest, it hasn't changed all that much since, you know, my grandfather was going the main standard, certainly, in the lower and the Bullens and the lower Bullens, certainly not. And part of the Gladys hadn't changed since my grandfather was going. So, you know, it's special, but also it is time to move on. So thank you, Goodison Park, and I hope Everton can give you the rightful victorious send-off against Southampton at the weekend. But you've been the scene of many great memories. You've been the scene of some absolute disasters for me personally, but you'll always be cherished and loved, and you'll always be an incredible part of not just Everton history, but football in history. You know, World Cup semi-final was played there. It's been host to so many great occasions down the years, and like other stadia that have gone, Highbury and Main Road and the Boeing Ground, are we still calling it that? So many great stadia of big clubs in the past where they've had to be knocked down and clubs have moved on. You know, it'll always be remembered and cherished as a lost but you know, just incredibly cherished and memorable stadium, and I'm very lucky to have gone for the last 30 years and to be able to pass on those memories to younger generations will be a pleasure. So yeah, like I say, thank you, Goodison Park, and here's to hoping for even better memories of Bramley-Moore Dock, or whatever the stadium will be called. Come on, you Blues, and just remember, it's only a game.
Yeah, just leaving a voice note, really, because of my thoughts on this. This has been kind of spoken about, sort of unofficially, amongst sort of Everton fans for the last few months. Certainly the idea that there were rumours going around that the women's team were going to inherit Goodison. So I think for a lot of the fan base now is kind of weirdly, well, it's not divided. I think most fans are happy that they're going to still keep Goodison in some capacity. Quite literally, some capacity. We don't know what the capacity is going to be yet. And I think a lot of fans have already said they're going to go more women's games next season, which can only be good for the club and, of course, the women's team if more people will be willing to go and see the women's team play, because it's the novelty of still getting to go to Goodison. So this has been on the cards for a while. I think the owners, the new owners, the Freaking Group are looking at sort of, obviously with keeping this now, is having that they can keep, lots of revenue streams coming in rather than sell off the stadium, and the land may not be particularly lucrative to sell off. So why not redevelop it, keep it in the club's hands, and keep it as a hub for the women's team, and who knows, even the youth team, and hopefully just the community in general. I do think in terms of the emotion, though, there have been a few comments where, yeah, it's weird because we built it up. The club have marketed it as goodbye to Goodison, and we're saying goodbye to Goodison, and this is it. You're never going to get to go again, and all this. And there's been all kinds of stuff said about, all kinds of documentaries and stuff as well. And yeah, it's kind of strange timing that literally days before they've gone, oh yeah, by the way, you'll still be able to go next season with the women. Which, granted, the women's team I think have averaged about maybe just under 2,000 this season. They're going to average way more than that, I think, now in the Women's Super League next season, which is brilliant and it's what you want to see. But then some people are going, oh, but it's still goodbye to Goodison because it's the men's team we followed and stuff, and it's that little asterisk now, and it does feel kind of weird. It's kind of like, oh, this emotion of, oh yeah, we're saying goodbye, and all the 1878s giving all the big banners at the Ipswich game and all the stuff that's been planned for the game against Southampton, club legends and whatnot, and it almost feels a bit like, yeah, but it's only goodbye for the men's team, which in this day and age isn't going to count, isn't going to cut it anymore, obviously, because they'll go, yeah, but the women still play there. What about the women? That's still Everton, which it is. It may not be the Everton team at Goodison Park that we all grew up watching and necessarily all follow as intensely, regrettably. But maybe it will actually get more people involved in watching the women's team or involved in following the women's team more because they're playing at Goodison. I don't know. But yeah, it's weird. I didn't think the stadium would just get knocked down. I think there's been rumours have been the women's team or preferably an Everton community hub base, because there's still like the Everton Free School still in the area. There's still things that Everton do in the area. So there wasn't any plans to sell it as such. And I think from a business point of view, it makes sense to keep hold of it and see what you can make of that. But yeah, it's just weird timing. And if this had been announced at the start of the season, we'd have all been able to prepare for it a bit more kind of correctly rather than outpouring all this emotion, being like, oh, well, actually, we might just go backward and watch the women next season. Anyway, that's that. I mean, Goodison won't look the same. They're not going to hold a 40,000 seat stadium for women's Super League football, especially in the condition it's in. It won't pass safety certificates anymore. They have to redevelop it, knock a whole chunk of it down, maybe keep the park end. But yeah, good decision to keep it within the Everton sort of community, to keep it within the club. Strange timing. Really takes a little bit of the emotion. That's that, really. Yeah, nice one, guys.